One thing that's really weird to note is that underneath Nicole's fingernails, there was DNA of someone who wasn't Ron and wasn't OJ. And there are shoe prints at the crime scene that don't match the shoes that OJ was allegedly wearing or Ron's shoes. So all of those factors ended up being a huge part of the defense strategy. And this is when a lot of alternative theories started coming up. So I really wanted to share these with you guys because I think a lot of people haven't even heard them. I know I hadn't even heard them all. So first of all, there's a theory that Bill Waz, who was a drug dealer and criminal from Virginia, he claims that he was offered $1,000 by Robert Kardashian to follow Nicole around and try to spy on her to see if they could find out who she was dating. Now, side note, I do want to mention that Nicole actually did say that she thought she was being spied on. In fact, she said she saw someone watching her in her yard one time. OJ was obsessed with Nicole. He really was, and he was very possessive of her, very, very jealous of her. Friends would report that he was controlling of what she would do, and I would not be surprised if he really did have someone watching Nicole. Is it even possible that someone who was watching Nicole thought she was in a relationship with her friend, Ron Goldman? Maybe this was reported back to OJ, and he got so upset that he took care of them both. But Bill also claimed that he was given $15,000 to kill Nicole. He supposedly kept all these different notes about where she was, what she was doing, who she was with, and he had literally a notebook filled with notes on this. OJ actually had a girlfriend at the time named Paula. It wasn't anything too serious, but this notebook was found in her car. And handwriting experts have reviewed this notebook and have determined that they think it is Bill's handwriting. So does this prove that he did it? Not really, but it does show that he must have been up to something, because why was he taking notes on Nicole up until she was murdered? So detectives figured this was serious enough to go and interview him. But at the time, so many people were claiming that they did it. Like, people were coming out of the woodwork to say that they killed Nicole. It became one of those weird things. There's so many people who have admitted to killing JonBenet Ramsey who they prove later didn't. The case I talked about last week, Alyssa Turney, there was someone who claimed to have killed her and the police think that he didn't. Just this weird thing that mentally ill killers start to do. So they have to take everything Bill says with a grain of salt. But the police could not find any evidence to connect Bill to the death of Nicole or Ron.
Bill Waz was fine in answering questions to a point where what he says cannot be corroborated, and he says, I'm not going to talk to you anymore unless I'm going to get paid. Sooner or later, you got to say, enough nonsense, let's get on to the evidence. If there was any evidence at all to connect Waz to this case, we would have pursued it.
This theory has been pretty much discredited, but it's very interesting to know. There's also a theory about a man named Glen Rogers. He claimed at one point that he killed over 70 women, and one of them was Nicole's.
His capture in rural Kentucky was like something out of a Hollywood movie. Glen Rogers is immediately linked to the murders of at least 4 women, including one in Los Angeles.
He said that he was painting Nicole's condo when he decided to kill her.
All right, now there's a story that he painted a house 2 houses away from Nicole's, right? That was what the New York Post
We're
said.
doing a lot of follow-up on these issues right now.
I'm absolutely certain that my brother Glenn killed Nicole Simpson and Ron Goldman.
In a murder investigation, you go where the evidence takes you, not where the BS takes you, where the evidence takes you. There's nothing of an evidentiary value to show that Glen Rogers had anything to do with this case. It's not his blood at the scene.
But police never found evidence connecting him to Nicole's murder either. But the theory that I think is probably most well-known, most popular, and has the most evidence behind it is a theory that OJ didn't do it. His son, Jason, did it. Police officer Bill Deere claims that Jason was the killer of Nicole. Now, I have to tell you, this theory has been widely discredited, but it is still very compelling to look at. Bill has been fighting for over 20 years to try to get this case reopened. He wants a grand jury to investigate the case because he truly thinks that Jason was the real killer. Basically, he said that Jason decided to kill Ron and Nicole, and that OJ came and tried to cover for his son, and that's why OJ's DNA was at her condo. Jason Simpson was known to have some problems. He was actually on probation for assault with a knife on his former employer. There were also reports that he had assaulted ex-girlfriends in the past. And Jason actually had a storage unit, and eventually when you stop paying for a storage unit, they auction it off to someone. So Bill Deere bought it and ended up getting all the contents of his locker, including these weird journals. They were basically these long diaries about really dark ideas about how dark and depressing life was and how angry he was, basically just how troubled he was as a person. And he also talked about killing people who hurt his family. But why would he want to do this? On the day that the murder happened, Jason was actually working at a restaurant called Jackson's. And that night, Nicole was supposed to come to the restaurant after the recital with all of her family, and he was going to cook dinner for them. And he was really excited about it. However, the day of the recital, Nicole called him and said that they wouldn't be coming. They said that it was a little too expensive and they'd be going to Mezzaluna instead. And people who were working there that night said that Jason appeared to be really upset about this.
How did you find out that the plan had been changed?
She in the conversation, she said, we can't come, it's just a little bit too expensive. So we're just gonna go right up the street. I was kind of hurt. I wish they would have come to the restaurant. But now I really wish they would have come to the restaurant, but she wanted to go to Mezzaluna.
Basically, Bill Deere believes that Jason got a knife from his job at the restaurant, went over to Nicole's house, got in some type of disagreement with Nicole, went berserk, hitting her with the blunt end of the knife, knocking her out, and then turning to Ron Goldman, who just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, and killing him as well. He says that then Jason came out of his rage and realized that he had done something terrible. He thinks that at this point, he called OJ, his dad, and said, holy shit, I have no idea, I blacked out in a fit of rage and killed them. And this is how OJ came to the house and helped his son. OJ actually did hire a lawyer for his son like immediately when this happened. And they also found out that Jason Simpson never got interviewed by the LAPD because he was never considered a suspect for them. They just wanted to talk to him. They asked him several times to talk to them and he didn't want to cooperate. But people poke a lot of holes in this theory. Basically, Bill thinks that when he committed the murders, Jason called OJ, and that's when OJ put together his outfit with the gloves, and he went back out of his house, crawled over a fence, and that's when he thinks that OJ cut his finger. He then puts his gloves on over the cut, gets in his Bronco, drives to the corner of Dorothy and Bundy where he sees two people sitting in blood, and according to Bill's theory, he then pulls off his glove, which opens his cut, and that's when he starts bleeding, and that's how his blood gets to the crime scene. He says that he then jumps back into his car, goes back to his house, drops the glove in the front yard, goes in to shower, and then hops in the limo to catch his flight.
All of that has to occur in 12 minutes. It's ludicrous.
Do Jason's motive means an opportunity really trump OJ's? The prosecution would say no. The police would say no. Most investigators will say no.
And this is crazy. Bill Deere actually dressed up like a doctor for 2 weeks and went undercover in a hospital to get Jason's medical record and prove to the court that he had intermittent rage disorder. At the time of the murders, he had stopped taking his antipsychotic medication. This theory has also been widely discredited because Jason's DNA wasn't at the crime scene. There was so much evidence on OJ that it almost seemed silly. I mean, there were 60 pieces of evidence, including blood samples and a sample of OJ's hair, and it was similar to black curly hairs that were found in the inside of the cap at the murder scene. And according to LAPD, Jason was never a suspect in the killings of Ron and Nicole. But now that we have gone over a couple of other theories, let's talk more about the evidence that it was OJ. OJ had a very dark side to him. A lot of people didn't realize this, and I think there'll be a lot of people out there who have been in an abusive relationship or have witnessed someone they love in an abusive relationship, and they can understand this cycle of abuse. There were several calls that Nicole made where she sounds terrified for her life.
911 emergency. Yeah, can you send someone to my house? What's the problem there? Well, my ex-husband or my husband just broke into my house and he's ranting and raving. Now he's just walked out in the front yard. Has he been drinking or anything? No, but he's crazy.
911 emergency.
Can you get someone over here now to 325 Gretna Green? He's back. Please.
Well, okay, what does he look like?
He's O.J. Simpson. I think you know his record. Could you just send somebody over here?
Okay, what is he doing there?
He just drove up again.
He just drove up
over.
Okay, wait a minute, what kind of car is he in?
He's in a white Bronco, but first of all, he broke the back door down to get in.
Okay, wait a minute, what's your name?
Nicole Simpson.
Okay, is he the sportscaster or whatever?
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
Wait a minute, we're sending the police. What is he doing? Is he threatening you?
I'm going nuts.
Okay, has he threatened you in any way, or is he just harassing you?
You're going to hear him in a minute. He's about to come in again.
Okay, just stay on the line.
I don't want to stay on the line. He's going to beat the shit.
Wait a minute, just stay on the line so we can know what's going on until the police get there, okay? Just a moment. Does he have any weapons?
I don't know.
Okay.
He went home and now he's back. My kids are upstairs sleeping, and I don't want anything to happen.
Okay. Has he hit you today or no?
No.
Okay, you don't need any paramedics or anything? Okay. You just want him to leave?
My door. He broke the whole back door in.
And then he left and he came back?
And he came and he practically knocked my upstairs door down, but he pounded it, and then he screamed and hollered, and I tried to get him out of the bedroom because the kids were sleeping in there.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And then he wanted somebody's phone number, and I gave him my phone book and put my phone book down to write down the phone number that he wanted, and then he took my phone book with all my stuff in it.
What does he say?
What else?
Units, your domestic violence at 30 Crescent 325 South Grizzly Greenway is now too high. The suspect is now entered in the shelter and it is refusing to leave. It's code too high. It's been 4221 RD 825 children involved. Just stay on the line, okay? Do you upset with something that you did?
A long time ago. It always comes back.
911 emergency.
Can you get someone over here now to 325 Gretna Green? He's back. Did you just please? Okay. Could you please?
And on January 1st of 1989, Nicole called the police.
Woman 360 Rockingham Avenue, apartment number 8. Female with her screaming over the phone.
She was found half naked at her house with bruises on her, saying that her husband tried to kill her.
She collapsed and started yelling, "He's going to kill me, he's going to kill me."
Not only that, but her sister had been taking photos of her bruises and storing them. And it had just been going on for so long. But many people in her life and people in the public started to put the picture together that Nicole was a victim of abuse who was covering up for her abuser, as many people in that situation do. She loved her family and she was trying to hang on as best she could to hold the family together.
Nicole did ask him to come back. She did try to put her family back together. She was the classic case of the battered syndrome.
And to this day, Denise Brown has dedicated a large part of her life raising awareness about domestic abuse in honor of her sister.
I said goodbye to her that night, and the next day I said, oh my God, he did it, on a phone call. And I can just remember that night where it's like, God, you love her one minute and you see her, and then the next minute, and you know, it's 23 years later and it still brings tears to my eyes because
of course it does.
This is my sister.
There was a potential witness. Her name is Jill Shively, and she said that around 10:45 on the night of the murder, she saw OJ driving like a maniac en route from Bundy Drive to his house. And he seemed so erratic that she decided to get his license plate number, and she presented this to police, and she was very close, like a couple digits off from his actual license plate, but it's hard to see in the dark when someone's driving fast. If the murders happened around 10:15, OJ would have time to drive home, shower, get in the limo by 11 o'clock, headed to the airport. Oh my gosh, this video is so long that my camera died while I was filming. This was a fully charged battery, so I had to charge it again and then reset up the lighting because it like got dark and cloudy. The trial began on January 24th of 1995, and this case was named the trial of the century because it really was. Like, this captured everyone's attention. The jury consisted of 8 people of color, 1 Hispanic person, 1 white person, and 2 people of mixed race. And this was one of the first cases that had cameras in the courtroom because there was such media attention around it and people and such tension in the streets. There was such a racial divide over this case and it really tore people apart. And another reason why there was so much tension was because of the killing of Rodney King. On March 3rd, 1991, 4 officers weren't charged, shocking, in the murder of Rodney King. Rodney King was an American taxi driver who became known internationally as the victim of the Los Angeles Police Department after a brutal videotape was released of them beating him, and they got away with it. So people were done. So needless to say, there was a ton of controversy and a ton of interest in this case, and the media presence was absolutely huge.
Las evidencias encontradas en la casa de O.J. Simpson, they have come from across the globe, bringing their satellite trucks, pulling miles of cable, setting up housekeeping and putting down stakes. You might not believe it, but they're here to stay a while. With them come the t-shirt hawkers,
OJ today, OJ.
the attention seekers, the curious.
Please don't forget the victims.
But let's talk about some of the key moments of this trial. One of the lead detectives, Mark Furman, was caught saying over 40 racial slurs, and this was on a tape recording that was played during the trial. Not only that, when he took the stand, they asked him if he's ever used the N-word in a derogatory way or at all, and he said he's never used it before, and anyone who said he has is lying.
Anyone who comes to this court and quotes you as using that word in dealing with African Americans would be a liar, would they not, Detective Furman?
Yes, they would.
All of them, correct?
All of them.
And then that recording came out. So that made the police look really, really bad. The defense really used this as their main point. Then there was the most famous moment of this trial.
That's People 77.
You have a problem placing the glove on his hand?
And there's so much controversy about this moment because some people think that OJ was purposely like stretching his hand out, trying to make it not fit, like pretending to struggle to get it on, which is easy to do. I struggle to get my gardening gloves on every time I put them on, but I eventually wiggle my way in there. And there were even reports that the glove may have been frozen ahead of time, making it shrink and therefore not fitting OJ. His defense team also pointed out that there were several issues with the forensic evidence. They said that the crime scene could have been contaminated and some of the evidence may have been packaged incorrectly. Some of the evidence was left in a van too long and ended up overheating. Johnny Cochran, who was the famous attorney in the O.J. Simpson case, gave a very powerful closing argument.
Maybe I can demonstrate this graphically. I'm gonna show you something. This is a knit cap. I'm gonna put this knit cap on. You've been seeing me for a year. If I put this knit cap on, who am I? I'm still Johnny Cochran with a knit cap. If you look at O.J. Simpson over there, and he has a rather large head, O.J. Simpson in a knit cap from 2 blocks away is still O.J. Simpson. It's no disguise. It makes no sense. It doesn't fit. If it doesn't fit, you must acquit.
This case went on a really, really long time. After 9 months and over 100 witnesses, it was finally time for the verdict. It was October 3rd, 1995, and the jury deliberated for less than 4 hours before they came out to give the verdict. And that is crazy. 4 hours for this case? Come on.
Mr. Simpson, would you please stand and face the jury?
Even today, as O.J. Simpson looked directly at them, the members of the jury refused to return his gaze, instead staring straight ahead, stealing furtive glances at the audience as the clerk of court read. The world, it seemed, held its breath.
Listen to the verdicts as they are being read. After the verdicts have been read, you will be asked if these are your verdicts. I would caution the audience during the course of the reading of these verdicts, remain calm. If there is any disruption during the reading of the verdicts, the bailiffs will have the obligation to remove any persons disrupting these proceedings.
Superior Court of California, County of Los Angeles, in the matter of the people of the state of California versus Orenthal James Simpson, not guilty of the crime of murder in violation of Penal Code Section 187A, a felony upon Nicole Brown Simpson. Find the defendant, Orenthal James Simpson, not guilty of the crime of murder upon Ronald Lyle Goldman, a human being, as charged in count 2 of the information. And 1 or more crimes of murder of the first or second degree to be not true.
All right, Mrs. Robertson, would you please poll the jurors?
Untitled action. Find the defendant, Orenthal James Simpson, not guilty of the
We don't know anybody, any woman who hasn't suffered some sort of abuse, physical abuse from a man, whether it's a husband or whatever. And it's just saying that's still not important. I mean, it was so obvious.
So people were pretty shocked that OJ was found innocent. Public's reaction to the verdict was really mixed. Their families were absolutely devastated, as you probably saw from the footage. But OJ was a free man. He went back to his house. But in 1996, Ron Goldman's parents filed a civil action suit against OJ Simpson in the wrongful death of their son. The trial took place over 4 months in Santa Monica. The jury in this civil trial awarded Brown and Simpson's children, Sydney and Justin, $12.6 million from their father as recipients of their mother's estate. The victims were awarded $33.5 million, therefore basically finding OJ responsible in the trial.
Simpson never took the stand at his criminal trial, but he was forced to testify under oath in the civil lawsuit that was filed by the family of Ron Goldman, who was murdered along with Nicole. In the video deposition, Simpson proved to be quite the slippery witness. Remember those bloody footprints at the scene of the murders? Prosecutors at the criminal trial said they were made by size 12 Bruno Magli shoes, and there were only 299 pairs sold in the USA.
If Bruno Magli makes shoes that look like the shoes they had in court that's involved in this case, I would have never worn those ugly shoes.
But then this photo surfaced of Simpson wearing Bruno Magli shoes 9 months before the murders took place. Look at his reaction when he's called back to give another deposition and is shown the photo.
That is a picture of you looking at Exhibit 1, correct?
Appears to be me, yes.
Years down the road, around 2007, OJ became convinced that there was sports memorabilia of his that was stolen from him. And OJ came up with this plan to confront the people who stole it and get it back. He went to these people's hotel room and actually wouldn't let them leave. So they were hostages. And this is where he ended up stealing back his OJ Simpson memorabilia that they stole from him. So obviously he had to go to trial for this as well. And that trial started on September 8th of 2008 in the Nevada District Court. And on October 3rd, 2008, OJ Simpson was found guilty on all 12 charges.
We, the jury in the above entitled case, find the defendant, Orenthal James Simpson, as follows. Count 1, conspiracy to commit a crime. Guilty. Count 2, conspiracy to commit kidnapping. Guilty. Count 3, conspiracy to commit robbery. Guilty.
Truly no reason to take him into custody pending sentence.
Thank you. That motion's denied. They're both remanded to right now.
Judge,
He was then sentenced on December 5th of 2008. The judge ordered a maximum sentence of 33 years, which is until 2041, with possible parole after 9 years in 2017. And he was incarcerated in the Lovelock Correctional Center until October 1st, 2017, when he was released back into the public. And nowadays, if you poll people, the majority will say that OJ is guilty by far, like closer to 80%. My audience, personally, it was over 90%. So I'm actually going to put a poll in the eye, which side is that on? And you can actually vote on what you think, because I really want to know your thoughts. I mean, at the end of the day, I feel like there was so much shitty police work that maybe they really couldn't convict OJ, but to me, it's such a slam dunk that he was guilty. The fact that the 2 gloves were found one at his house, one at the other house, like, does it for me. I will say the theory that Jason did it is very interesting. I don't know, at the end of the day, I think O.J. Simpson killed Nicole and Ron. I feel so sorry for them. Nicole was in years of an abusive relationship, and I just feel so sorry for her kids, and everyone involved, and of course the families of them both. That is it for me today, guys. I want to know what you think of this case. I know it was probably really confusing. There's so many more things I want to talk about, but this video would never stop. So maybe I should do a podcast on this. Hit the thumbs up button if you would like to see a podcast on the O.J. Simpson case going more in depth than I even could in this video. Stay safe, and I will see you next time. Bye.
Hello, I'm Denise Brown. I know how important the National Domestic Violence Hotline is. I was there in Washington, D.C. after my sister Nicole was murdered. I was called to testify for the passage of the Violence Against Women Act. The hotline has been saving lives for 15 years. Call 1-800-799-SAFE for personal and confidential help. They care, and they can help. You are not alone.
To the edge of the earth.